Welcome to I Change the Narrative, a podcast for and about Black men inspiring, supporting, and empowering Black men and Black boys. This episode of I Change the Narrative is sponsored by So Organic, So Suave, also known as Sauce. Sauce is a luxury hair care and skincare refuge for those with thick hair and melanin-rich skin. From healthy beard growth to top of head hair styling, to an illuminating skincare regimen. Sauce Essentials will naturally enhance your outer appearance to strengthen your inner confidence. Sauce invites you to accept the authenticity and real self-care and embrace your best. You can find Sauce's award-winning grooming essentials online at sossd.co. Again, that's sossd.co. You can follow Sauce on Instagram and for latest and product news and updates at sossd.co. Elevate your grooming with Sauce today. Today's topic, we're talking about Black men in Pilates spaces. Before we start the conversation, I want to ask our guest to tell us about himself, where he's from, and the work that he is involved in that lends itself to the topic or the lived experience. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Martin Reid. I'm from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, which is just outside of Toronto. And I have a Pilates studio. I'm a fitness business owner. I've started in fitness and then got into Pilates specifically over the last few years. I feel like it's important to diversify my fitness business, and I realized early in the game that there was very few men in Pilates and even fewer brothers teaching Pilates. So I had a corner on the market, and I recognized that Pilates was a game changer for men. I work with athletes, older athletes, young people, and for all of them, it really has been something that has changed the way that they move and breathe. So that's been my focus over the last little while. I shifted more of my brand towards that. Even made the hashtag, follow the hashtag Real Men Do Pilates to challenge the narrative on men and movement, because Joseph Pilates was a man. It was designed by a man for men. So that's where I'm at with it. And I've really enjoyed the journey of introducing men to something that can be a game changer for them.
Thank you so much. So as you said, it is a hard truth that Pilates is predominantly is portrayed by anyone else other than ourselves. I felt that
Yes.
Black men were underrepresented as teachers and as users of the Pilates method. We have Black men in yoga, but again, very few are aware of Pilates. So, with this conversation today, it is my hope that from having this particular conversation, that will open up the minds of, of other Black men to explore and become empowered and even encouraged to consider becoming open to being part of this movement and also bringing awareness to Pilates in our community. So let's get started. For listeners who may not know what Pilates is, Martin, can you explain to us what it is and how it started?
Sure, Ganika. I honestly, Pilates is something that is, I keep saying it's a game changer. It is something, I call it the missing link for people in their fitness journey, because it focuses on those smaller muscles. It improves your posture. It helps with the way that you breathe. Even it's very holistic. It's a full, complete exercise system, and sometimes people put it in its own separate silo, but it is part of movement in general. So I think of it that way. I might sometimes say it's kind of like yoga to give people a frame of reference for what we're doing. But the majority of people, I just say it is movement, and it's going to help with your posture. It's going to help with your strength, your core strength, any injury prevention, and it can meet you where you're at.
Yes, that's one of the things that I love about Pilates. I do been doing Pilates since January, and I came in, walked in the intro class with a two frozen shoulders. As soon as that
Yes.
intro class was over, I had no more frozen shoulder, and I had been dealing with frozen shoulder for a year. as well as
Right.
prior to Pilates, I went to physical therapy for a couple of sessions. That did not help. But after Pilates, that intro class, like I said, I had to join, and I've kept it up since, and I have no more frozen shoulder. So, speaking
That's
of,
yeah,
mhm,
yeah, sorry. No, that gets me excited, and that really is part of my journey of how I found Pilates is when I was playing football at university, there was times that I had some back injuries going to high school into my first few years of playing football. And I went to a Pilates class and I was going to a Cairo. I was going to the Cairo 3 times a week. And as I was adding Pilates, there's just a group fitness Pilates class, not even the specialized stuff that I have in my studio. Uh, but the 3 times a week for Cairo became twice a week, and then once a week, and then every other week. So I recognized that was a thing. Oh, I apologize for that.
that's quite all right.
Make sure that that's off. Um, I realized that as I was doing my Pilates, that there would be times that as I did that, it became prehab as
Mhm.
opposed to rehab.
Oh, I like that.
And that's what it is for people. Pilates becomes prehab to their rehab. They go in and they recognize that you do it once and then they feel better. And if they keep doing it, yeah, and I'm not knocking chiros or physios or anything, but like you recognize that over time that this is something that can help you and it becomes a maintenance thing for you, a
Right.
preventative measure. And yeah, and your shoulders, if you keep up with your Pilates, you're probably not going to feel any more issues with your shoulders as long as you're doing your Pilates, which
Yes.
is a pretty good incentive, right?
Yes, a great incentive. I was sold after that. So, you have a phrase, hashtag real men do Pilates. Can you elaborate on what is real, who decides what is real, and how do you
Yes.
define what makes a man?
I love talking about this. That's the very thing. I put real men do Pilates out there, and it's not my line. Someone else was using it, and it really did speak to me. So
Mhm.
I decided to own that space, use that hashtag, make it my Instagram because it was public domain. But now that's the thing. I ask, what is real? What is a man? What is Pilates, right? Like all the different elements of that. And those are the pieces that we need to unpack because, masculinity, toxic masculinity becomes a thing. So you think, well, a real man doesn't do something that is that emotive or that is that kind of touchy feely. Like real men just like lift heavy weights. It's like, no, no, no. Like that we can challenge that. Um, are you courageous? Are you curious? Are you brave to try different things? Like that's being a real man.
Yes.
Those things. I'm just challenging the elements of what we perceive as men to do. Put your neck on the line. Do something that's unfamiliar, that's uncomfortable, that you're not going to be good at the first time. Are you bold enough to do those things?
Mhm.
And I think that's part of the Real Men Do Pilates challenge, that mindset of explore something that's probably going to be better for you if you can get over yourself long enough to try something new and recognize the benefits of it.
Absolutely. How has Pilates changed your body and your outlook?
Now that's a good question. While I was doing my initial certification,
Mhm.
I was doing this 600-hour classical Pilates training cert, and the gentleman who did it is also a black man who has been who Chris Robinson is his name, and I don't like to name drop. I just really do appreciate what he's done.
Mhm.
But he was sharing a story of how when he got into it, because he was a kickboxing champion and a track athlete and all these things, how his instructor, who was a second generation teacher, a first generation teacher actually, Romana, challenged him to stop working out so he could get Pilates in his body. I'm doing air quotes for people listening on a podcast.
Mhm.
Get Pilates in your body. And so when he was teaching us, he challenged us to do the same thing. So, I played football, trained my whole life. And to get into Pilates, I accepted the challenge of doing something different by ceasing to do resistance training for a year, for almost 18 months while I was doing my course.
Mhm.
And it was hard. And there were times when I hated life because I'm so used to working out.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I did lose a little bit of muscle mass, but I felt better. I was still playing football, flag football, and I felt like my body was injury free. the whole time. I was faster on the field. And overall, I just felt better. So my body composition changed, but overall, I actually felt better. So now I could speak from experience to say that if you're just doing Pilates by itself, you will see some benefits.
Mhm.
I still recognize the value of resistance training and the importance of that. But the Pilates piece itself is something that has made a big difference in my body, and I just feel good, and I know how to address
Mhm.
shoulder pain. I know how to address back pain, and we can empower the people that we teach to own their practice. I say, like, I'm coming alongside you in your fitness journey, right? So you own the practice, you can own it, and you know what to do to mend your body based on the principles of Pilates.
Right. So do you specialize? I heard you say classical. Now, does that consist of just floor or does it consist of the reformer as well?
The reformer as well. So in my studio, I have like the mat, the raised mat, the
Mhm.
tower, the reformer, a ladder barrel, like all the pieces, the chair.
Mhm.
So I have that, but the mat work is the real work. Like the original order is the mat and the reformer. So even though we have all those pieces of equipment, they're great, but they lend to the movement, and they assist your body in the way and the form of what you're supposed to do for each exercise. But when you have just the mat,
Mm.
there's nowhere to hide.
No.
There's nowhere to hide. And if someone understands the principles of Pilates and are doing the mat work, you can do the basic mat every single day of your life.
Right.
Doesn't matter how advanced you are. You could have been taught by Joseph Pilates himself, and he'll still say, 100 roll up leg circles, rolling like a ball. Go do it, and that's your movement prep.
Mm.
As an athlete, that's still my movement prep before I do any sport or whatever it is. It becomes part of what you do. And just on a side note, that's the thing. That's the selling point when I say LeBron James does Pilates, and they're like, oh, okay. Well, it's one of those things that guys get it. When you get it, you get it.
Exactly. You had mentioned about the resistance. Doesn't the resistance come in when you use the reformer?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because there's not to complicate it too much, but adding springs can make an exercise harder or easier, and vice versa too. So it depends on what the exercise is and where the direction of force is. You can make an exercise more difficult by taking the springs off
Hmm.
because you have less stability, and then I have to depend on my core strength, my shoulder stability, my back stability to be able to do the movement. So there's so many different elements, and it is very intricate, and your body will love it. It really will love it.
Hmm.
And depends on where you're coming from with it. You'll find there's a basic exercise that's going to be challenging for you, and there's going to be a super advanced exercise that might be light work because that's just the way your body moves. So it is very customized to the person in front of you.
So sometimes it is light work. However, it's hard work sometimes. Like
Yes.
you can really work up a sweat doing Pilates. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And there's like you can definitely, because you're holding positions for a while, or
Mhm.
you're using muscles that you've never used before. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing too, right? Like you can do a squat, a new bench press, whatever it is, and then that's one thing. But when I have you moving from really, really tiny muscle that you never really thought that you knew you had, or that sort of thing, then that's when that sweat starts to break out. You're using your nervous system in a different way.
Oh,
You're thinking about the exercise and thinking about what the movement looks like, so that you have that mind muscle connection, and that is sometimes the thing that starts that waterfall, right? So
right. Right.
yeah.
Wow, your nerves are actually working. That's good. I've never heard that.
Well, yeah, it's that neural pathway, right? Like, I mean, think of just learn to do a new movement pattern, a new exercise. And we went and played a sport you never played before. You're thinking about it, and you're putting a lot of effort into making that golf swing
Mhm.
perfect,
Right.
right? Where someone who's been playing golf since they're 12, to get out there and they do it effortlessly,
Hmm.
right? If the two of you, the 12-year-old, and you go out to golf, to the driving range, who's going to be sore the next day?
Hmm.
It's going to be me because I don't golf every single day.
Right. Right.
And it's not just because of the swing, it's because I'm thinking about, okay, put your foot like this, turn your body like this, shift this like this. Like you're making all these micro adjustments that you're putting demands on your body in a different way.
Mhm.
And that's the challenge of it. That's the beauty of it.
Yes. Once a person begins to engage in Pilates, what mental health benefits will they begin to experience?
That's a great question. I love answering this question because when people come into my studio and they're really busy with their kids or their business or whatever,
Mhm.
usually open with, "Are you here?
Yeah.
Are you here yet?
Are you
Are
here?
you here?" For all of us men and women who come in and you're carrying your children, you're carrying your school schedule, you're carrying your work with you, if this is a moment to be present.
Mhm.
It's a moment to be present in your body. And if I can give you 1 hour of your week to yourself, it's going to help the rest of the hours. So I really do take time and honor the fact that you're here, honor the fact that you're stepping into the space and you're giving yourself an hour, or a half hour, whatever the case is. So that mind body connection, that mental health piece, is great. And my clients know too. My master's degree is in counseling, so
Mhm.
they have that benefit of knowing that they can ask me a hard question or bounce something off of me and kind of get that 2 for 1, like psychological help as well as that physical movement, and the two are very connected. But it is them to be present, and that's all I ask of my people is just to be present in the hour that they're with me.
I like that that's your request for them to be present. I know after getting off work, sometimes I'm just totally drained. But I
Mhm.
know I have this Pilates class to attend right after work, and it really changes after I walk out of that studio. I just
Absolutely.
feel like I have a clear mind.
Sure.
It all For me, it gives me that second wind, and that's what I appreciate about
Well said.
yeah, second wind.
And And I also the other part to it too is creating a safe space
Mhm,
for people. And
mhm.
I go a little bit further to say create a brave space.
Brave space.
So it's one thing to have a safe space where someone feels like they can share, the struggles with how do I connect with my daughter?
Mhm,
Or, this is going on in my marriage right now. And like those conversations will happen, but it still takes the person recognizing it's a brave space where I can put that out there. I'm not going to be judged for saying it. Like it has to come from them. It's a safe space where it's not going to leak, but it's a brave space where you can now step in and say, this is what I'm struggling with. Hey, maybe we need to have, let's do a session where you can bring your daughter in with you.
mhm.
Let's bring a session where we can have that guy. Maybe I'll just do a session with your son and we can talk it through, and you never know what's going to come up in the conversation, but at least he has another safe adult in his world besides you to talk with them. So I lend to those things, and I try and cultivate a community and a space where those things can happen. And I think that sometimes that does more benefit than the movement practice itself.
Right. What ages do you work with?
Oh man, I have a 10-year-old I'm working with right now, and I have a 70 something that I'm working with right now. Athletes of all ages.
Okay.
Yeah, anyone. Pilates is for every body. Full stop.
So no age limit.
No age limit.
I'm glad. Can you say that one more time?
Pilates is for every body.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. How do you think Pilates contributes to the nourishment of the Black community, especially Black men and Black male athletes?
That is uh, that is an interesting way of looking at it. I feel like I've very intentionally been addressing that without realize I was addressing that.
Mhm,
I feel like, for men to find this movement practice, to find life in it is great.
mhm.
To recognize that this could be a viable career option is great. To recognize that this can be that secret weapon if you're an athlete that gets you the next contract. Or, one of my colleagues worked with NBA teams. Is like all you have to talk about is playing time. The currency is playing time. So if you can stay injury free, you get more playing time. If you can improve your lateral quickness, you get more playing time. If you can improve your vertical, you can get. So Pilates can lend to all those things. So for whatever it is that people are looking for, I can speak to that from a career perspective to a performance perspective.
Mhm.
So for Black men, there's a lot of men who are in the fitness industry, a lot of guys who are doing personal training. If I was to look at my business goals in terms of my Pilates business,
Mhm.
I would tap every black male personal trainer and say, come follow me.
Mm, that's good.
You know what I'm saying? Like, go take any Pilates cert under the sun. Let me mentor you. Let me answer your questions. Let's look at it from a different perspective, and let's get you a different competitive advantage in the marketplace with this Pilates piece, because I think that is something that, especially in Canada, I don't know what the climate is where you are, but in Canada, there's this a simple, honest novelty to men teaching Pilates.
Mm,
And the unicorn in this industry is being a black, straight, male
mhm.
Pilates instructor
Right.
that did not do dance,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And as simple as that sounds, and I've got some flack for separating Pilates in terms of dancers and non-dancers, but for my hockey player, weekend warrior guy who comes into the studio, he can't put his foot behind his ear. He can't do the splits. You know what I'm saying? So like he doesn't necessarily see himself in the work.
Right.
So how do we get people out there that can see themselves in the work, doing the work?
That's good. That's good.
So
Um,
that's where it comes from for that for me.
I like your perspective, and here it's I have not seen any black male Pilates instructors. Um, when I first joined in January, I was really surprised that there was even a female black instructor.
Mm,
I was so thankful to see that because you don't hear about us in these spaces. So,
right.
you know, I'm just
Yeah, no,
thankful. I'm thankful. Through my studies, I'm learning that there is more and more of us occupying these spaces. So,
there's a group called Black Girl Pilates
mhm,
on Instagram. You can follow them. Melon and Brother Pilates is a group that's it's kind of like a brother organization to them.
yeah.
I do a podcast called Core Conversations, and on that podcast, I have connected with. I've done over 500 episodes, and I've connected with people in the Pilates industry. So I can confidently say that if there is a black male Pilates instructor out there that has any kind of social media presence,
Mhm.
I've probably met them over the last 2.5 years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What is the training like for those that may be interested, may want to do something different? What is the training
Mhm.
like for you?
There's a lot of courses out there. There's Balance Body, there's Peak Pilates, there's a lot of different organizations. And then there is also a lot of studios that have their own apprenticeship programs. So I recommend that you do some research. Start with a Balance Body, for example, which is one of the major Pilates equipment suppliers,
Mhm.
and start there. Do your research. Look at who is closest to you, geographically speaking, and then follow them on Instagram, follow them in social media, see what people are saying about them, and do some research, because you really can't go wrong with any Pilates certification, because I believe that Pilates certifications are like getting your driver's license.
Mhm.
Once you've done your certification, you're safe to operate a vehicle, but that doesn't mean that you're Lewis Hamilton.
Right.
It should be a continuing education. It should be a continuing bettering of yourself. So that's your starting point
Yes.
when you get your certification. So get your certification anywhere, and then dive deep on whatever you realize is your niche. Start in a big box space, start in a studio where you're going to see lots of different bodies and lots of different perspectives and injuries and levels of fitness. And then from there, you start to boil it down. Like, I noticed that everyone who had a spinal injury is coming to me. Start doing some courses with people who do applies for spinal injuries. I
Mm.
noticed that every football player is coming to me. Start doing courses for Pilates for athletes. I noticed I'm getting all these dancers who come with injuries. Start looking at people who work with dancers. And that's how you find your niche within this market.
Uh,
You find the thing that you're most passionate about, the thing that's coming to you as well. And then from there, continue to specialize.
awesome. Dispel some of the myths or misconceptions about Pilates.
Yes, Pilates has gone through the same racial awakening that the rest of the world has gone through.
Mhm.
And there was a time when Pilates was seen as, you know, tall, skinny, white woman's exercise methodology.
Yes.
That was when you went to a conference, that would be the only person on stage. When you picked up a Pilates magazine, that would be the only person on the cover. When you went online, that'd be the only person in all the images. I still defy you to find a black Pilates instructor image on Google. Like, I don't know if there is one. So that sort of thing. There's images. There's a perception that kept being, it kept coming up. So that been a lot of a challenge with that, and people calling out industries and calling out magazines and calling out conferences and stuff that elevated one type of people doing the work. When if I said Pilates is for everybody, I mean everybody, skin tone, size, orientation, whatever you want to place it. The myriad of different people groups, every other group is represented in Pilates, but only one was being reflected
Mhm.
in the media. So that is a myth. It is not just for women, not just for white women or whatever the case is. It is truly for everybody. And that's why I take time, even on my podcast, to celebrate everyone and what they do.
I would have to agree with you on that. When again, I'm going to go back to my experience in Pilates. When I walked into the studio, there were there's 12 reformer machines, um, and each one was filled by a black woman, and I was
Mm,
happy to see that. In most of my classes, there are black women, so and they are all sizes, all shapes, and the instructor that I had was did not portray this, what the images that we're used to seeing, skinny. Um, she was a nice size woman and a real woman, I would say,
yes,
in our eyes. So I'm just so grateful that you're in this space. I'm so grateful to see all these other women and even some of the men that I looked up that you are connected with. I'm just so happy and proud that you all are occupying this space and that you all are changing the narrative. Are there
absolutely.
yeah. Are there anything else you want to tell us about Pilates and how people can connect with you and um, if they want to take some of your classes because I do know you offer virtual classes.
Absolutely. Yeah, the last thing to your point you're just saying there is I really feel like for the men out there that are in the Pilates space and are doing great work, like the Jason Williams and Philip Griffins and Martin Phillips here in Toronto, there's quite a few guys that are doing it that are doing great work. And I say that we are leading from the middle.
Oh wow.
And there's people who are like the upper echelon and they're doing their things, and then there's people who find one of these guys and say, look, men do Pilates, not even black men, look, men do Pilates.
Mhm,
And that opens doors for them, and then that allows the Pilates instructor in the middle of nowhere that has no men in their studio. They go on my Instagram or one of the gentlemen I just mentioned, they see that and they're like, okay, now the men are like, okay, there are guys.
mhm,
So we're leading from the middle because we don't have this massive platform, and we are getting more opportunities to speak,
mhm.
and to present and to do those things, but in the meantime we're leading from where we are. And so that's really important. And I have a website. My Instagram is really one of the best places to get me and to see what I'm doing. And also on YouTube, you can see the archives of all the conversations I've had with everyone. I can almost say everyone in the Pilates industry that has tried to have some social media presence. Black people in Barcelona and Australia and South America. We did a conference for Black classical Pilates instructors in Brazil,
Mhm.
and talk about an inaccessible practice. Like, classical Pilates is very expensive to do these things, and then there's a bunch of them who just want to learn. So I came in and did like a push-up workshop and did a classical Pilates mat order conference workshop and answer questions and stuff. So we're trying to get out there, trying to let people know that this is the norm, that men do Pilates, that black men do Pilates, that Pilates is for everybody, and we're just trying to reinforce it with our images and our messages and social media.
I thank you for that. One last thing I did want to discuss because
Sure.
this may be a concern for some that are looking into Pilates. Let's talk about the price, the cost of taking these classes.
Yes, that's great. There is different models, and if you look at like a traditional marketing funnel, you may have something that's big and low threshold entry point at the beginning, and then as it gets down, it gets more and more specific. So for me, and for those of you out there that are thinking about your Pilates business, I have a large group class and I have an online class that is in that $15 to $25.
There's still some feedback. I think I don't hear it anymore. I hear you. We are just waiting for him to come back on. Thank you for being patient. We know there is a technical issue, but we're getting it together.
Is that better?
Yes, that is better. Thank you.
Okay. So sorry about that. I don't know what happened
Yep.
there.
It's okay.
All right. Circling back to the accessibility,
Mhm.
I like to have different levels of service for people. So a large group class to a private one-on-one session, and have all of them in there because you need to make money to be able to continue to do your work. And then you also need to be able to make it as accessible as possible. So trying to find that sweet spot, and that's found through having large group classes, which also make you better as a teacher, and have your group, your privates. And in the privates, don't be afraid to ask what what you feel your value is.
Mhm.
That's sometimes one of the things that comes to us as people, men, women. You almost apologetically undersell yourself. And
Mhm.
I feel like we should unapologetically present the fact that we've put hundreds of hours into our profession, and ask what you're worth. And you never know what people's situation is. Maybe they have an expense account from work, a health benefit, and it's not even out of their pocket. Like, I'll do this a week because I'm not paying for it. And then you give yourself a 40% discount for no reason. So charge what you're worth, and also have accessible menu options so that you can touch as many bodies as possible.
I like that. I like that. Martin, thank you for allowing me to showcase your story, for being a light on the show, for doing your part in changing the narrative, and lastly, for keeping your commitment by being a part of the show. This means so much to us. If you've enjoyed the show, please let us know. We would love to shout you out and post your comments. If you or someone you know is changing the narrative, please contact us at iChangeTheNarrative@gmail.com. We would love to hear your stories. If you've would like to purchase merchandise from us, I Change the Narrative merchandise, visit us at iChangeTheNarrative.org. Thank you to our sponsors, So Organic, So Suave. You can follow Sauce on Instagram, and for the latest in product news and updates, visit at sossd.co. We will not have a show on October 29th, but next week we will be here, same time, same place. Great conversation, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much, you all, for listening.